back to RC-558 Special Topics in Rehabilitation. And this class again is specifically focused on rural rehabilitation. My name is Dr. David Beach. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Kentucky Graduate Program in Rehabilitation Counseling. This week we're going to discuss, or this lecture we're going to discuss the National Agrability Project, which is an effort by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to develop a program to provide services that will allow farmers and those that work in the agricultural fields to continue to work in the agricultural field even as they age or obtain disabilities, or if they are born with disabilities. This would allow access to continue to work or to initiate work in an agricultural field. And this discussion goes hand in hand with the discussion that we had earlier related to the huge gap in medical services and psychological services, that many individuals in rural areas don't have specific services that can meet their need, their unique need. And the National Agrability Project is one of the few efforts that are out there, and one I wanted to highlight in this class of an example of a project specifically targeted and very effective at providing access, return to work access to persons with disabilities for those that work in the agricultural field. For this class, please go to the Blackboard site and download the PowerPoint entitled Agrability, and please follow along. We'll be starting on slide 2, where we talk a little bit about the basic vision of Agrability, which is to enable a high quality of lifestyle for farmers, ranchers, and other agricultural workers with disabilities. And it's sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and consists of a national project, state regional projects serving 24 states, which collaborate between land-grant universities and various nonprofit disability service organizations. We're going to talk a little bit about that role. This is a unique role where you have this project sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which prior to the development of this program had absolutely no interest or there were no attempts to provide services or consider persons with disabilities in any of the programs they have. And this program, as it developed, it recognized, in fact, it was ahead of the curve in that it recognized that our farmers are aging. And there aren't a lot of young farmers taking their place. So for farmers to function and since many farms are small in nature, the U.S. Department of Agriculture knew that for these farmers and these farms to continue to exist, support would need to be provided, not only in education, which is provided through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, but through various resource development aspects where they can help the farmer, maybe get implements modified, tractors modified, also various assistive technology devices that can assist them in doing their job. So this is a very unique partnership. It involves the land-grant universities, which typically do the county extension offices in each state, as well as with the disability service organizations. In Kentucky, just as an example, the land-grant institution is the University of Kentucky, and it partners with Human Development Institute, which is also located in the University of Kentucky, as well as the Kentucky Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, where that agency also works with this program to provide services to our rural farm workers. Moving to slide 3, it's considered to be a consumer-driven program, and provides vital education, assistance, and support to farmers and ranchers with disabilities. It utilizes the cooperative extension system and the nonprofit disability organizations, which I just referred to assist individuals either start farming or continue farming. It received first federal funding in 1991 and was implemented as recommended in the 1990 Farm Bill. Each year, competitive projects have been awarded to cooperative extension services that qualify by working with nonprofit disability organizations. And then there is a technical support project in Purdue where Agrability, the Agrability project between Purdue, which is partnered with Goodwill, and they provide technical assistance to other partners that are out there, grant recipients, persons seeking technical assistance in starting, initiating Agrability programs, and they also provide training and information dissemination. Now, I've referred a couple times to the extension program, and in fact, even in the gaps in services and medical services, I refer when they talk about future models that may be replicated for health services to improve. One model they discussed was the agricultural extension. And I wanted to take just a few minutes, a couple slides here, to discuss the agricultural extension program so that you would have an understanding, because the agricultural extension program in rural areas is very vital, because it provides vital information to farmers, to homemakers. They hold very important positions in the community, and they're often well utilized. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because Agrability, like I said, is a very unique project because it utilizes this model that's already in place to really reach out to a population that's in need. But the Agricultural Extension Service was created almost a century ago to address rural agricultural issues. It is not, if you're not familiar with extension services, it is not, was never intended to provide services to persons with disability. It was here mainly to support the farmers, and it was created when we were still an agrarian society. More than 50% of the U.S. population lived in rural areas, and 30% of the workforce was engaged in farming. These extension programs, as I said earlier, are largely engaged by land-grant universities, and usually that's your flagship university in your state, in your respective state. Again, as I mentioned earlier, University of Kentucky, which is our land-grant institution, also runs the agricultural extension services. The staff that work in each county in Kentucky are employees of the University of Kentucky agricultural extension program. The universities and their local offices are supported by the National Institute of Food and Agriculture and the federal partner, which is the Cooperative Extension System. This National Institute plays a key role in the land grant extension mission. It distributes annual formula grants to supplement those state and county funds. So there's some funds that are already there to support this program and the programs they provide, as well as they also have grants that they can provide to supplement that money. Moving on to slide 5. Just for your information, the Morrill Act of 1862 established land-grant universities to educate citizens in agriculture, home economics, mechanical arts, and other practical professions. And you still see that in the services provided by the Agricultural Extension Program. They do the homemaker program, they do 4-H, They do services to farmers, and those work in the agricultural fields as well as many other activities. But you still you see that consistent with the initiation of its mission, even from back in 1962, which was during the Civil War. The extension services was formalized in 1914 with the Smith-Lever Act. It established a partnership between the agricultural colleges, which were your larger land-grant universities, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture to provide that agricultural extension work. Which, looking back, that's very forward-thinking, because you established your land-grant institutions, which were often your research facilities even back then. They were cutting edge, and it created that link to cutting-edge programs right to the users that would be using many of those techniques that researchers were working on in their in-state institution. The agricultural extension purpose was to develop practical applications of research knowledge, giving instruction and practical demonstrations of existing or improved practices or technology in agriculture. Moving on to slide 6. This slide just touches some more information about agricultural extension. It has changed a little bit, but it still focuses on its mission. It works with 4-H youth development, where it builds life skills in youth, build character, assist them in making appropriate life and career choices. They have at-risk programs. They still have the agricultural projects, which we discussed, which are research-based, they're education-based. They provide training when they'll come out and provide technical assistance. I can remember when we had a farm, we considered growing a different crop, and they came out and provided some input and sort of provided some information as to how we could start growing a new crop, which we chose not to do, but they'll come in and provide guidance so that you can, so you'll have some knowledge and information and be empowered to try new things and prosper. They'll do soil testing, helping you manage your resources, control crop pests, etc. They also provide leadership development, trains the extension professionals and volunteers to deliver programs in gardening, health and safety, family and consumer issues. It's a very impressive program, provides a lot of valuable services. Today, it still discusses or focuses on the taking and training landowners and homeowners how to use natural resources wisely, protect the environment, talk about water quality, timber management, composting, lawn waste management. And they've been doing this for years and years and years. They were initially the first to be doing these types of programs and getting that information out. It talks about family and consumer sciences, a very vital program where they help families become, they teach nutrition, they look at food preparation, financial management, positive child care approaches, communication, healthcare strategies. And then they're also looking at community and economic development. They go into rural areas and in many cases the agricultural field may be dwindling or not thriving, so they meet with farmers and community leaders to talk about how they can change their approaches and maybe to form co-ops or the different options they have to make their products and what market they have more viable. So the Agrability program is run through the extension offices. and it's a key aspect of that. And I wanted to cover that. But let's talk a little bit more just about agrability. Again, on the slide 8, we talk about the vision again, high quality lifestyle for farmers, other agricultural workers, so that they, their families, and communities continue to succeed in rural America. We all know we have an aging population. The baby boomer, which is a large group, is aging. Many of those still continue to farm. Generation X, not as big, so many of these farmers, as they age, there's no one to come take their farm, no one to pass it on to, so they'll farm later in life. Also, just the nature of the work, many can't afford to retire. So agrability is built out of necessity and try to add more quality of life, but also an ability for them to continue to work and have some income, so they're not so they're not dependent on others or public welfare. Many times they look at success in agrability as measured by gainful employment, production, agriculture, related occupation, access to assistive technology for work or ADLs, assisted daily living activities or activities of daily living. Maybe it's just about providing information to the families and the individuals about treatment and rehabilitation, and then maybe some just support for family caregivers. They might have a person with a disability that has some mobility impairments, and they work with the families to provide information about how to care for that individual or support that individual in whatever they're trying to do to make their life more independent. And in the second part of that slide, and this information is from Agrability, but it just discusses the many disabling conditions which can occur in agriculture. Obviously, as you have an aging population, arthritis, back impairments, visual impairments, hearing impairments, respiratory impairments. I mean, many of those come from just somebody working for 30, 40 years in a physical field. Many times in terms of farmers, they handle very harmful chemicals. Many times they don't know the safety. They don't adequately ventilate or protect themselves. And a lot of these disabilities are age-related. Also, because farming is a dangerous activity, a dangerous job, we do see things like spinal cord injuries and back impairments, head injuries, because that's just the nature of the job. You work around heavy equipment, you work with animals, you work you work in dangerous situations. It's more likely that something might happen to injure you. Therefore, you might need services to help you stay working in the fields or working in a farm setting or a ranch setting. Agrability has some priorities that they identify as these main three, as they want to develop a service capacity through innovative educational programs designed to advance individual capabilities, new technologies, and then deliver program content through appropriate educational venues. So they want to develop new programs with these new technologies and then get that message out there to those people that need it. They want to encourage networking, which I think is a great priority, so that they can get a lot of information sharing where you have peer-to-peer interaction. So if you have a farmer that's been injured and maybe is now quadriplegic, and you can get him connected with another farmer that's quadriplegic, and they can talk about a lot of different things, most of which would probably relate to work, but also some of the other issues that are involved with being a quadriplegic. Also provide direct service to agricultural workers through individual consultations and other means. So, Agrability actually has some staff that all they do is focus on providing direct services. And that's usually through partnerships with those disability organizations and the public VR program. If they meet eligibility requirements, then services can be rendered, or if there's specific direct funds from the Agrability program. To be eligible for Agrability, you must have some type of disability, physical, cognitive, or illness related, and these are examples that Agrability provides, but those are just examples, and make sure you understand that is not an all-inclusive list. They also provide, this slide is slide 11. I wanted to give you an idea because it's, especially if you're at all interested in what goes on in farming, I think it's fascinating the services that they've developed, and really in many cases, Agrability services and the issues they focus on really are ahead of the curve in terms of forward thinking and being not necessarily preventative, but being creative and really meeting the needs of people with disabilities far beyond just their purpose. And I'll talk about this. But slide 11, I want to provide some examples of the services that Agrability provides. The first is assistive technology assessment and resource linkage. Agrability staff will come in and provide some type of assessment, and they can be related to agricultural related enterprises, home modifications, independent living, livestock handling and housing. So they can maybe make some recommendations based on your disability, how to improve your house, your lifestyle, change the way your business runs, how maybe you can change the how you if you have livestock, change the physical venue where you bring your livestock in so it requires less physical effort. Materials handling, outdoor mobility. The one I really impresses me is because it's holistic, and many specific programs don't tend to be holistic, but this focuses on assessment related to outdoor recreation, understanding that people that live in rural areas do so for a reason. It's many times so they can have that contact with the outdoors. Many farmers or agricultural workers enjoy their time out in the outdoors, and it's important for them to, and many of them have recreation activities that involve being outdoors, and part of their quality of life is not just their work, but it's the recreation activities, maybe riding a four-wheeler or hunting or fishing or gardening or any types of activities that are outside, and they do assessment to assist the individual understand what options they have to still continue those activities and increase that quality of life. And you don't see that in many other disability related programs, even in the vocational rehabilitation program, which is focused, and even though it is vocational focus, there are a lot of quality of life and independent living aspects of it in the law. However, we've never really focused on that recreation aspect, even though that improves quality of life and independent living. So, I want to recognize Agrability for thinking about that and really sticking to that quality of life promise that they discuss in their purpose. They also assess, potential for secondary injury, illness prevention. They'll assess shop tools to make sure that the tools that you have in your farm or your ranch. You know, are there other assistive devices? Can they modify, etc.? They'll look at tractors and self-propelled equipment to determine what modifications may need to be there, and truck modifications. Other examples of Agrability services and resources, they have independent living technical assistance. So if you need some assistance, this is above the assessment phase, where if you need some assistance, you have questions, they can utilize the home economics or the consumer sciences aspect of the extension services to talk about this independent living. Also, the disability nonprofit organization can serve as a resource. They provide professional training to employers, service providers, and consumers so that they can provide education about persons with disabilities, about rehabilitation technology, but also then train a lot of service providers on the special needs of the injured farm worker. They provide information dissemination to various individuals and groups, disability awareness programs, linkages with other farmers with disabilities to develop a network for sharing ideas. So the extension office, or where many farmers come together, they're interconnected with other extension offices, so you have a huge opportunity for linkages. They also provide referrals to appropriate agencies and resource linkages to agencies that may be of benefit. So with that concludes the slides. Now on the blackboard, I've also included some specific links to Agrability sites. So make sure you peruse those, check those out. Because I think one of the things that the more I read about Agrability and the more I'm involved with, I'm very impressed, because it's taking a model, seeing what works, partnering and collaborating, and provide services to a very a population that's underserved and has great needs, and utilizing strengths in a service and that aren't really considered disability related. You wouldn't necessarily think if I have a disability, I would go to the USDA. That's who grades the meat in the fridge and inspects my milk to make sure it's okay. But this program has sponsored the the Agrability program, utilizing the extension services, which is vital in many rural communities, and it's taking advantage of a place where many farmers already go for help, and adds that service and really closes that gap, which is it's very impressive, and something that, as I think we continue to try to close those gaps, things that we should consider, using this model. We should continue to try to use this model to benefit our rural citizens with disabilities. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this lecture, and I appreciate your time. And please make sure you look through all the training, or all the websites, and check for any discussion